Hello, friends. Welcome to Brass and Bougie. This is the home of Adrian's Gun Diaries, where I, an everyday woman, share my personal journey exploring firearms. Today, I want to talk about why I decided to get a firearm. And I'm going to go through the 5 key steps along my journey that influenced my decision to purchase my first firearm. So let's get started. Number 1, the first step that really influenced my decision to purchase my first firearm was a desire to overcome my fear of firearms. And at this point, I wasn't even thinking about purchasing a firearm. I was really just looking to challenge myself to overcome some things in my life. And so I had an opportunity to take an intro to firearms class with a group of women. And in the class, they really talked about some of the basics that you learn in an introductory class would include some basic safety fundamentals. You have to learn the basic fundamentals of how to handle a firearm. You learn the parts of a firearm and how they fire and how to load the ammo. Some different rules on the range about how to be safe. And then you have a little bit of time to go to the range, shoot off some rounds, kind of start to see what it feels like to shoot a gun, because if you've never done it before, you just don't know what to expect. And I didn't know what to expect at all. I had never even held a firearm in my hand at that point. And so it was fun. It was kind of a social thing to do with a group of friends. And, I took a picture at the end for the gram, posted it, and kind of thought that would really be the end of my journey. So that was really the first step. The number 2 step in my journey to deciding to purchase my own firearm was meeting my husband and getting to know him. And when we first met, he wasn't my husband at the time, but he owns several firearms. He always has, and he carries regularly. And so just in the course of getting to know him, I had to come to terms with the fact that he was pretty much always going to have a firearm. The only experience I'd ever really had with a firearm up to that point was like my grandpa's shotgun, in the corner, in the bedroom. And the only rule we really had at that point was like, look, don't touch. And so I pretty much took the same approach with my husband's firearm. That's your thing. I'm gonna let you do your thing, and it don't really have nothing to do with me. So, that was really how I approached it with him, and it was just kind of another step along the journey. At that point, I still had no interest. I still didn't ever really think I was gonna have anything to do with firearms. That was his thing, and I just figured, we would go on in parallel worlds in that way. Okay, so the number 3 step in my firearms journey was after my husband and I got married. And of course, this brings me into a much more intimate relationship because we have firearms in the house. And after we got married and got our first house, my husband's actually a former security professional, and he is very, very security minded. So, he just always kind of has that mindset, and he was for the most part cool with me like doing my thing and him doing his thing. But then when we got our first house, he really started to talk to me about at least getting comfortable learning how to safely operate the firearms that were in our home for home protection. If, God forbid, you're ever in a situation where you need to use one, you want to know how to do it and you want to know how to be safe. And you don't want that to be the first time that you're really interacting with the firearm. So He planted some little seeds along the way and gave me some time to get comfortable with it. And, I really started to kind of take some steps to just get more comfortable at that point. And, where I started was going to the range with him a few times with his guns and just trying to shoot those and see what it felt like. I was kind of getting reintroduced to them because it had been years at this point since I took that first intro class. So like I kind of remembered, always assume that it's loaded, keep it pointed down range, don't point it at any, some of the basic safety fundamentals, but I really kind of felt like I was starting over again. And I shot his guns and I really didn't like it. Like I really didn't, it just felt overwhelming to me. I was still a little scared of the recoil. I was really startled by the sound because they're loud. Like when you go to the shooting range, especially when you're not used to it, it's loud. You have ear protection. I know you put the little muffs on. It was still loud. And I was, it was just a lot to take in, and I needed to go a few times before I got comfortable. And then I also took advantage of renting other firearms at the range so I could try out different calibers and different styles of guns and just like see how that all felt different. And it was such a dramatic difference. I mean, even getting a different caliber than my husband's everyday carry made a huge difference in how comfortable I felt just handling it and shooting it and feeling like I could really manage it. So that really helped me understand that the only way I was going to get comfortable was repetition and practice. And I really didn't want to practice with what he had. So I started to think, okay, maybe it's time for me to think about what I would want for myself. And, just have something that I could practice with on the regular. So in the event that I had to use something for home protection, it was something that I was comfortable doing. So that was step number 3. Really just kind of exploring what I would need to be effective for home protection.
Hey, if you like this content, please take a minute and hit the like button, drop me a comment, and share to let me know. Your responses really help my channel, and I appreciate you. If you'd like to see more, click the subscribe button and the notification bell so YouTube knows you really mean it. Thanks for the love and for sticking with me. Now back to the video.
The number 4 step in my journey in purchasing my first firearm was going to the USCCA Expo. And this really became a pretty big game changer for me. I remember when I went into the expo and, you get the little booklet that, tells you where all the vendors are and the schedule and all that stuff. And I opened it up and read the introduction, and there was a little phrase in there that said, for people who have the courage to carry for good. And I remember just thinking like, wow, I kind of never really thought about it like that. Because there are a lot of people that have firearms for all the wrong reasons, or have a really, let's say, unhelpful mindset about firearms. And so, everything I had known up to that point was either people getting shot, there's just so much in the news about people getting shot, or just all the things that go wrong with people owning firearms and using firearms. And this was really a point that caused me to really look at it differently. And at the expo, they had so much education, and the focus was so much about it's not about being paranoid, it's about being prepared. Like, you don't want to be the only person without one if you're in a situation, right? And I'm like, okay, that makes sense to me. I can get down with that. Um, and then there were just so many workshops that I'd never really considered. Like, they talked a lot about how to avoid being in a situation in the first place, how to really kind of be aware. And, as a woman who grew up in the suburbs, I just didn't ever feel like I needed to really pay that much attention to what was going on. Like, I lived in a safe neighborhood and I went to safe places for the most part. I mean, I lived in New York City for a while too, and there were unsafe places I went. But I still never was just in a place where I thought about being responsible for my own safety and my own security. And so that was a really big focus. And another thing that stood out for me in that expo was hearing over and over them talk about the length of time an incident typically lasts, which is seconds in most cases, and the length of time it takes for police or other emergency responders to show up on the scene. And that time is getting, longer and longer as there are less police on force, like you just always, I won't say you, I always thought that, like, if something goes wrong, you call the police, or, somebody's going to be there. Like, I just never actually sat down to think about what I might consider in terms of my own personal safety and how I could be prepared to handle that. And so they had classes about situational awareness. They had classes about home protection. They had classes about traumatic first aid, which, like, I also never thought treating a gun wound is a totally different first aid than you ever learn in the little CPR class that I'd taken before. So it was just a lot of information. And, that really, I think, had me to feel empowered. And so I kind of left there. Oh, the other thing about the expo was they had all these different vendors with all these different handguns available. So I could, like, just try out a lot of different things and, see how things felt in my hand. And there were so many vendors that had different types of gear. Like, I never considered how much there's a whole world that I had never been exposed to. And all the different types of gear, all the different types of apparel for people who conceal carry, all the different types of things that you could spend money on. I just, like, I used to be a really heavy shopper, and I'm like, okay, this is a whole money trap and I need to watch it. But it just really helped me to shift my mindset. And I really started to think about, one, the idea of balancing the scales, like, making sure there are enough responsible gun owners to balance out the people who may have ill intentions with their firearms. Number two, the concept of really taking ownership of my own safety, my own life. Like, I'm not going to have a protector out there with me at all times. Even though my husband carries, he's not going to be with me all the time. Or I might be in the house by myself. Like, I need to be prepared to be responsible for my own safety. And just really, like, having the knowledge and having the information versus just out of sight, out of mind. Like, I just never thought about it. I never spent time thinking about it. And I really started to think about safety as self-care. Now, I've been on a whole other journey, and there's a whole other channel of content to talk about what my self-care and health and wellness journey looks like. But I really started to think about my own personal safety as self-care. Like, how do I preserve my life? What good does it do me to eat well, to take care of my body, to take care of my mind, if I'm not in a position to preserve those things if I find myself in danger. And truthfully, I don't want to be the only person without one. Like, I live in Texas, and so it is very gun friendly. I'm not trying to be the only person up in here that doesn't have a gun, if it comes down to it. So there was a huge mind shift for me, and really, really influenced me in choosing to purchase my own firearm. Hey, okay, I had to jump back in after I finished recording the video the first time because it was something really important that I left out of the journey, and I wanted to add that back in. So when I was talking about going to the expo and all of the different things I learned there, one of the things that I neglected to mention was that I stopped at one of the exhibitors that was hosted by the National African American Gun Owners Association, NAAGA. And I had an opportunity to talk to a couple of different gun owners, women gun owners, Black women gun owners, basically people that look like me. And hear a little bit about why they carry, how they do, how it's worked into their families, and kind of what their journey has been like. And one of the ladies actually not only talked to me about what her everyday carry weapon was, or some of them, but also went with me to check out a couple of the vendors and just talked about some of the things that were factors in the decisions around what she purchased, what she liked, what some of the things were. Like, she happened to have long nails. I don't. But, sometimes she carries with different clothing, or whether or not she's with her children or things like that. Like, she just talked about some specific experiences that she had, and some of the other women talked about their journeys as well. And so it was super helpful to me to get to hear from other people like me that have a number of different experiences with firearms as well, but just to give me different perspectives and hear from real live people, as opposed to just, people who are selling, or people who are at the range and things like that. So that was a huge factor in me not only getting more comfortable, but learning a little bit about it, what it looks like every day for other people like me. And she actually encouraged me to take advantage of the free range that they had there and try out a few different guns. And it helped me find the one that I chose. So I just wanted to add that in real quick. I'll let you get back to the rest of the video, and I hope you enjoy. Thanks. All right, and number 5 reason that I decided to get my own firearm is because it's fun. It has been so much fun. Like, I know I talked about, kind of getting over the initial shock and learning how to manage recoil and how loud it was and all the things I didn't know. But the more I learned, and especially the more I went shooting, just to get comfortable, the more I started to have fun. And I got to experience different firearms too, to see how they feel differently. And some of them were fun to shoot. So it just kind of opened up a whole new world for me. And it went from being a fear-based decision, and by that I mean even just overcoming my fear, and it evolved from being just solely focused on safety and self-defense to something I enjoy doing. And there's a whole new community of people around shooting and shooting sports. There's shooting sports. Who knew? There was a whole world out there. People shoot for competition, people hunt, and even as I think about living a more holistic life and, being able to provide my own food, that could look like hunting. So there's a whole lot of fun to be had. And I think just kind of breaking through those initial barriers made a huge difference for me in making the decision to purchase my firearm, and I love it. So that sums up the reasons that influenced me in the decision to purchase my first firearm. And I'll probably do a different video to explain the process of how I went about choosing my first firearm, because that's its own journey. And also talk about some of the other accessories that came along with the first purchase. So thank you so much for spending this time with me. I'm excited to just keep talking about my journey and sharing it with you. You may learn something as I learn along the way. That's kind of my hope. And I'm also really excited to just continue to build community and meet other cool people who also are interested in shooting. All right, take care, be well, and have fun. See you next time.